Yes. So Jeff, you will be seated, Bob's not recorded, so.
You never heard from Bob then, huh? Okay. Jeff, are you coming to the table? All right.
What's the buzz, Jeff?
Okay, are there any items to be added to the agenda by board members or staff? We'll note that Todd is here to provide our parliamentarian procedures
Did you
and
pick up
support.
the board?
I have this.
Yeah.
Oh, open? Okay, thanks.
Okay, next is an invitation for citizens to schedule time on the Board of Adjustment agenda for an item not listed.
Did anybody
Okay.
not sign on the
We
form?
have Christy and Amber.
Anyone else? We have
Any-
Alan and Linda says opponents, but you want them on the open as well?
Yeah.
Okay,
So we have Alan, Linda, Christy, and Amber. That's it. The open.
okay, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Say nay. All right, agenda approved. Now a motion to approve the minutes from the September meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 9th, is that right?
Yes. We have a motion to approve in a second by Tom. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I'm going to ask any board members if they have any conflicts or ex parte communications that would make them unable to participate in the hearing. Oh, is this on? You bet, yeah. Yeah. Yep. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead with the agenda items for Craig Whiskey. And the request is for a home extended business, a private campground. And before I turn it over to staff, can I get a motion to approve the conditional use permit request for a home extended business, private campground?
So moved. Second.
Motion to approve in a second. All right.
Okay. Is there anybody that did not get a chance to sign the sheets stating that they wanted to testify pro or con regarding this matter?
Todd, is there an application for the public available?
Yep, it would have been on there,
Where?
in the agenda. Where they always-
The application is?
Well,
I have one here if you want to look at it.
Thanks.
Okay,
See, posts in the office.
Yep.
Office copy.
Okay. Do you want me to use that instead?
No, I just want to make sure that you realize that it was available.
Yes, there's one to be available at night, at the meeting
do
too.
you want a copy of the staff report as well?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so the applicant is Craig, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. Whiskey. Property location is the northwest quarter, northwest quarter of the northeast quarter, excluding highway lots H2 and lots 124, excluding lot H1, section 33, 121, range 51. This gives you a general location. I think that's the Twin Brooks exit. The general property is kind of right when the two triangles come together about halfway down the section. Mr. Wisty wishes, say that. Mr. Wisty wishes to develop a private campground with 12 pads at full build-out. It is presumed that the pads would be rented out to workers associated with the wind energy development in the region. Regarding the notice, the initial application for the CUP was received on September 18th, 2019. I know it doesn't show that on the application there, but that was the date. Notice of the public hearing was published in the October 9th, 2019 edition of the Grant County Review. This property is currently zoned agriculture and is not situated over the shallow aquifer. This is a new ground for the zoning board of adjustment, so we wanted to kind of give more of a perspective on what the ordinance says and doesn't say about campgrounds. We do have campgrounds defined in section 224 of the ordinance, which says shall mean a plot of ground for public use upon which 2 or more campsites are located. Established, maintained, advertised, or held out to the public to be a place where camping units can be located and occupied as temporary living quarters. Campgrounds for tent trailers and recreational RVs should be cited with consideration for access to the property. Campgrounds should be designated to minimize the impact from adjacent major thoroughfares. We have that, and we also have what a park and recreation area is. A park and recreation area is a public, non-commercial recreation facility open to the general public and requiring minimal structural development, including but not limited to playgrounds, parks, monuments, green strips, open space, mini parks, athletic fields, boat launching, ramps, piers, docks, picnic grounds, public campgrounds, swimming pools, and wildlife and nature preserves, along with the necessary accessory facilities such as restrooms, bathhouses, and maintenance of such land and facilities, but not including private commercial campgrounds, commercial recreation, or other amusement centers. Park and recreation areas, which I just gave you the definition, is allowed as a permitted use in the ag zone and by a conditional use in our natural resource zone. But it should be noted that private campgrounds by themselves are not included in the definition of park and recreation areas. So they're not a permissive use, not a conditional use, because they're not listed or allowed in the ag zone. However, when you take a look at the section of the ordinance that deals with home extended businesses, which are a conditional use in the agricultural zone, section 1209, which is a extended home occupation, which governs the home extended business section, states that for the purpose of this section, provided all requirements are met, the following shall be considered extended home occupations: welding, veterinarian, blacksmith, service offices, generally those types of businesses that support the agricultural economy. However, there is a catch-all under letter E, others, which in the opinion of the Board of Adjustment would not conflict with adjoining land uses. So what the ordinance is saying there is that if somebody wants to do something that's not one of those 4 listed extended home occupations, they have to come to the board. The board would have to hear their case and then make a determination whether or not that type of home occupation is appropriate and does not conflict with adjoining land uses. So since private campgrounds are not allowed in the agricultural zone of the county by either right or by CUP, the only way this request can be processed is if the Board of Adjustment determines that the use is appropriate to the extended home occupation. Now, we do not have specific regulations or standards governing the development of private campgrounds, but Section 805.2 allows the zoning officer to request information that might be applicable to any request. The Section 504 also allows the Board of Adjustment to review specific requirements and apply conditions if necessary. So, without any standards to go off of, what I did as serving as your BOA officer in review of applications is I took a look at what other counties do and how they regulate private campgrounds, and put a litany of questions together, which some of you are going to have to address tonight. But if approved, staff recommends that the Board of Adjustment address the following: the location and dimensions of the campsites. How big are these pads or lots going to be? Mr. Wisty has provided a rudimentary drawing showing the general location of the 12 pads. Location and access, we know that's off of 458. How is the interior circulation? How wide of a road is it going to be on the interior accessing the campers? Water. We do know that he is planning on using water from a well site on the property. And his DNR has reviewed the water quality test, and it's potable water for the site. Electricity, we are presuming that the rural electric will be providing electricity to these sites. There will be a transformer constructed on site to break up the power to those camping pads. We don't know exactly, we have a general location of where those lines are going to run. As far as sanitary sewer or septic system, the plan is to have each campground pad be connected to a sanitary sewer service line, which would then end up getting dumped into a large septic system tank, then using a common field that they use to, like what most people use their septic systems for. I think the board should also take a look at how is garbage and rubbish going to be stored and disposed on site. We don't have any information regarding that. Are we going to have lighting and light poles and where those locations are going to be on site? What about the types of campers? Are we allowing manufactured homes? Is it just going to be campers and trailers and tents, what have you? Another question that comes up lots of times is what's the number of individuals residing on each campsite? If I have a camper, can I put 7 people in that camper? Are we going to limit or restrict it to the number of campers that are inside that specific camper? Who's going to be managing the site? Is it on-site? We presume it's going to be Mr. Whiskey. Who maintains the grounds? What about toilet and bathing facilities? There are none shown, and we don't expect that there would be a bathhouse, so to speak. What are the screening requirements? Are there any necessary? What about haul roads? What about the life of the permit itself? Is this a perpetual permit, or is this something that has to be renewed every 1, 2, or 3 years, what have you? Those are just some things that the board maybe want to consider in their deliberations. Since the home extended business is not specifically identified in section 1209, the board will need to determine that this use, quote, would not conflict with adjoining land uses. Grant County has not previously entertained a conditional use permit request for this type of home extended business. The board has recently discussed and determined that home extended businesses such as assisted living or group homes or auto sales are not appropriate as home extended businesses in the ag zone. Regarding this conditional use request, a yes vote will authorize the use of the property as a home extended business private campground. If approved, staff recommends amending the zoning ordinance subsequent to allow for private campgrounds and developing a specific siting criteria. So if we decide to go out and determine that this is an appropriate extended home occupation and we use some of the discussion items for tonight, I would recommend that you memorialize that with an ordinance amendment down the road so that it provides specific guidance to anybody that wants to be coming in and developing a private campground. Staff further recommends the approval of subject to the applicant signing a letter of assurance agreeing to maintain in accordance with information provided to the board at this meeting and any conditions applied to the board. Recommended minimum conditions to be agreed in a letter should include the following. Now they don't all have to be, but I'm just giving you some guidance and ideas. Again, a more formalized sketch plan showing the location of the camping pads, all amenities, light poles, roads, location for garbage and rubbish, all existing proposed buildings or additions, dimensions of any buildings, distance from campsites to the property lines, dimensions of all property lines, parking lot spaces, lot stalls, aisles, name and location of adjacent streets and alleys, proposed grading and drainage patterns, interior circulations, proposed open spaces, utility, water, and electricity plans, the minimum number of square feet per campsite, the maximum number of campers per campsite, the maximum number of unrelated adults, the maximum numbers per campsite. Can I put 3 or 4 campers on a single site? And what's, again, the maximum number of individuals staying in each individual camper? All the interior roads, what the minimum road width would be. I would suggest no manufactured homes in the campground. The campground shall be also supplied with potable water and sewage disposal facilities that meet state and county regulations. Garbage and rubbish storage. It's recommended that you have at least one refuse collection system with 1 2-yard dumpster for every 12 tenants. Grounds should be kept free of trash and rubbish and debris. Growth of brush, weeds, and grass shall be controlled. Prevent the control of ragweed, poison ivy, poison oak, and other noxious weeds. Campground shall have a responsible person on duty or available at all times. Owner of campground shall keep accurate records. Such a record shall be available for inspection and copying by the Secretary of Health or zoning administrator for the purpose of protecting the health and life of persons in emergency, which may affect the public health. The registry shall contain the name of the guest, the number of the party, the place for permanent residence of the guest, date of registration, date of departure, and the motor vehicle license number of the registrant. Public safety access, the owner of the the owner of the private campground shall allow law enforcement and Grant County personnel immediate access to determine if the terms and conditions with this conditional use permit are complied with. In the event the private campground does not comply with the terms of the CUP, said permit is revoked. The owner of the private campground shall provide for all, at their expense, the restoration of the site to its original condition, removal of all campers, RVs, dumpsters, etc. All applicable requirements of the South Dakota Department of Health shall be met. All road agreements with Grant County shall be provided for the use of 458th and 149th Street with our standard language regarding what maintenance is. In the event a home extended business may not be changed to a different home extended business except for a new conditional use permit. There would be available employment of up to 3 non-family employees on site. Off-premise signage would be restricted to South Dakota Department of Transportation directional signs. No change in the outside appearance of the buildings or other visible evidence conducted by the home occupation. No traffic shall be experienced by such home extended business in greater volumes than would be normally expected in the ag neighborhood. No equipment or processes shall be used in the home extended business which creates noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors, electrical interference. In the case of electrical interference, no equipment or processes shall be used which creates visual or audible interference. Conditional use permit for the home extended business is not transferable. The CUP shall be issued for a period of a year need to determine whether it needs to be renewable, and any failure of this CUP permit would be deemed a violation, and the Grant County zoning officer will determine the violations. And if the violations are substantiated, the Board of Adjustment may hold a hearing to consider revocation. So that's a lot, but those are common things that we see in other places across the state. When it comes to private campgrounds, public campgrounds are generally held to a different standard than private campgrounds because there's usually a public component. They're usually owned lots of times by a city or a county or state government on those public campgrounds. Private campgrounds usually connote more of a business-based service as opposed to a park and recreation aspect of it. So being that, I think there's a lot of things that will come up. I'm sure there'll be some conversation, and you as a board are going to have to determine whether or not the things that I stipulated are important to have if you determine that you want to issue a permit. That's what I've got.
Do we have any other facilities in the county that are very similar?
Not a private campground that I'm aware of.
Johnson's campground.
What?
Johnson's. Be out there on the highway, they've got campgrounds, but they were grandfathered in prior to the ordinances.
What about the one north of Batesville?
Probably Roberts County.
That's
Roberts
Roberts
County has
Oh,
got.
that's right, that's just
Yeah.
across the line.
They have an ordinance that's
Roberts
being written
County
out.
has a specific ordinance that has many of the similar things that I spoke about as a regulations for private campgrounds. Kingsbury County has similar regulations. Much of this comes from Hamlin County, which with Lake Ponset, they have a lot of private campgrounds in those areas as well. You see it more in counties where you have a lot of lakes and that sort of thing. Campgrounds in this situation I know is probably related primarily to maybe workers, work camp kind of a thing, but it doesn't mean that a person couldn't create a campground and use it for hosting hunters or, you know, pretty good fishing in the area. I mean, that's where you will see this going down the road without some sort of specific regulatory aspect of it. So it's really a large discussion. I should also note that I know that the county commissioners have talked a little bit about this, and they're generally supportive of an idea of maybe changing the ordinance, but they understand that this is in your courtroom, so to speak. It's up to you to decide how you want to approach it. That's what I have, Madam Chair.
So really to change the ordinance, we should have a ordinance just for private campgrounds.
If that's my recommendation, if you decide to choose to issue the permit tonight, that you would need to come back with some rules
How do we,
to do that.
we don't address it under a home extended business?
Moving forward, I don't think I would, but I think the option is there for Mr. Wisty to come in and make it because you have that catch-all category of home extended businesses. And the last time we had this conversation a couple months ago, there were a couple other home extended businesses that they didn't make the application, but they were curious to see what you went. We had that discussion, and I think at that time you were thinking we aren't really encouraging those types of businesses to occur out there. So that was the direction that you gave to Kristen to let those individuals know that. This is just more of a formalized process. He's actually paid the dollars to have this hearing, and now you have to make the determination, one, is this an appropriate use at this location that doesn't affect the adjoining property owners? And if so, do you need to attach conditions or standards to this development? So now we're at the time of the public hearing.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead.
First, the applicant.
Oh, yes. First, we'd like to hear from Mr. Whiskey concerning the application.
We're requesting putting in 12 sites, basically for the workers that are coming in to work on the wind generators and the lines and everything. And hopefully then maybe after whatever time they move on, maybe we can switch it over to like fishermen and stuff like that.
You heard me go through a litany of different things. Was there anything that was objectionable to you as far as some of the things we were talking about in here, as far as just knowing a little bit more information on how you're going to handle rubbish and garbage and lighting and those types of things?
No.
Do you have any idea as far as, are you thinking one camper per campsite?
Yes.
And are you thinking as far as the maximum number of people that would be residing in
I
that
haven't really
camper?
thought about the maximum. I would guess, maybe 2 or 3 if, I don't know how those guys, if they get together and.
The reason I'm asking, because if I've got 12 campers and I've got 3 people living in a camper, that's 36, you know what you're designing your septic system for.
Right.
If I got 7 people living in there, now I'm going to need a bigger septic system, right? Or is my potable water enough supply to support, and if I got 10 people, and now I've got 70 people, I got more people than living in Martin, living in your backyard, right? Marvin, well, Martin too. My point being is that those are some of the questions that the board are going to need to wrestle with. Because what we have seen in other states, this sounds like a very nice thing, and we all got friends that work in the Bakken, and on a wink and a nod we work it out, and then the next thing you know, you've got 120 people man camp living in a place, and I don't know that's not your intention. I understand that, but those are some of the things that the board's going to have to wrestle with.
Gretchen Misty here. I think, the guy we have designing the septic has also done a lot of septic for the campgrounds in Summit and that, so I believe that he's designing it to handle.
Mr. Eccles that's doing that for
Yes.
And we also had to send a drawing of that to DENR, and they approved it.
Okay. Do you want me to first? Okay. Okay, we'll now begin with proponent testimony. Staff will read your name. Please come up to the table before making any
It's
comments.
small enough crowd.
All right.
Any proponents?
Any proponents in favor of this campground? Want to speak? Anyone want to speak in favor?
More time.
Any proponents that want to speak, please come up. All right. Now, we have the opponents. If there's anyone who would like to testify in opposition to the request but has not been called up, we will allow 1 minute for each of you to address the board. Or, no, first, yeah,
3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Be quick.
Any opponents?
Any other opponents?
Have you spoken with your neighbors at all about your proposal and what you want to do, and have they given you any indication what they think about the idea?
We've spoken to our closest neighbor, and he's in favor of it. That would be Paul Dillon.
to the north of Paul Duman's place, there's a place